Quick introduction. My name is Keith Drozdowski. I'm a systems engineer here at Eastern. The reason why we're here is because we're all transforming our businesses, right? We're trying to make it sleek, faster, being able to deploy faster, and being more application centric. So we're really going to kind of center in on IT and digital transformation. But the reason why I have all of these up here is because I think it's important because they're all kind of tied together in how we get from point A to point B. So let's establish a few ground rules first. So when we talk about modern infrastructure today, uh, what does that mean? Let's kind of keep it in the storage framework because that's what we're talking about today. So we define modern architecture as flash-based. We have to have scale up and scale out. It's going to be software defined and cloud enabled because that's really where our applications are being developed. And all in all, it really has to be trusted because if the data is not secure, then that's going to cause some challenges later on. So all of these things matter, but it also has to be secure. So according to an enterprise storage group, 71% of organizations have stated that data is the key to their business. Now, that survey was taken a couple of years ago, so I would imagine that's probably higher now. Just talking to our customers, it's really more like 90% of our customers are really saying that data is the key. Uh, and 63% of those that were surveyed at that time were also saying that they're building what they call data-centric applications over the next couple of years. And that's what that's doing is it's really putting a strain on the infrastructure. When you talk about innovations in storage technology today, like flash, SCM drives, and even data reduction, um, the sheer amount of data, not to mention the data diversity, is really putting a strain on resources. And what we're discovering, at least from our customer base and customers that I've talked to over many years, is that there's no one infrastructure to handle it all. So what's happened is you now have a siloed approach to infrastructure. Now, traditional arrays are continuing to evolve and innovate, right? But Dell Technologies really believed that storage really need to evolve farther, and they need to really come up with a new architecture if it was going to be able to handle all of those workloads. And that's why we're here today. We're introducing Dell's new storage infrastructure, Powerstor. It's really been designed for what they're calling the data era, and we'll get into more of that as we go through the presentation. So what's Powerstor? So Powerstor really is providing our customers with a new storage platform that's data centric, has built-in intelligence, and really adaptable to handle what we deem as traditional workloads, but also the modern workloads. And we're going to dive into each one of these pieces as we go through this discussion. So it's an appliance that's been it's really going to transform the storage world. It's really 2 years in development. It's built around flash NVMe technology. It's really has a lot of advanced features, and we'll get into more of that as we go through this presentation. But let's talk about each one of these features. When we talk about data centric, what does that mean? And really, it eliminates a lot of the trade-offs in performance when you talk about scalability. So one of the biggest challenges that our customers come through is as they develop new applications, as the data grows, they find that the performance on their storage or their infrastructure really does start to suffer after a while. So what Powerstor addresses is being able to address all of those workloads without really compromising performance. So when you start talking about all of these different traditional and modern applications like databases or even ERP, medical records, and even cloud applications, and various connectivities, Powerstor can kind of handle it all. So whether it's container-based or applications or even file NAS-based, Powerstor is designed to handle all of those workloads without compromising scalability or performance in that scalability. So Powerstor is designed to either scale up or scale out depending on your requirements. Now, Powerstor is also designed to deliver consistent efficiencies. So what does that mean? So gaining efficiencies through inline and always on data reduction. And what that does is provide a guaranteed average of 4-to-1 data reduction. And again, the whole idea is not compromising data performance, compromising performance. Now, I will say that most of our customers will see higher efficiencies. But again, your mileage may vary depending on the type of data and the type of workload. Also, the maturity of using NVMe flash drive technology, a Powerstor now can deliver sub-millisecond response. And that's important to note, especially with high transactional type workloads. So what does that really mean? It means that now you have enterprise class storage capabilities in a mid-range storage platform, making it accessible to everybody and not just the large enterprise companies. Because of its scalability, you can start small and grow into it as your demands grow and as your applications grow. So the reason why I mentioned enterprise class storage within an enterprise package is of these features right here. So you're talking about non-disruptive. And when I say non-disruptive, I mean that means continuous access to your data. And that's done through resiliency, through redundant components, dual porting, and cluster high availability. Also, the RAID protection, replication, local protection at like snaps is also designed to deliver on 6 nines of availability. So let's talk about the intelligence for a second. So what does that really mean? What it means is taking a lot of the redundant tasks that you have on a daily basis, especially when you're talking about deploying or provisioning storage, and reducing those through automation, reducing those tasks and reducing the risk through automation. Another piece of it is also having proactive analysis of the environment. So it's constantly monitoring the environment and being proactive and looking for things that might potentially be an issue further down the road. So it's constantly doing analysis on the environment. It looks for any anomalies and it can have a proactive approach. Now that could mean maybe opening a service call or giving you an alert saying that there may be a potential issue or something that needs to be looking at. So driving those automations helps reducing a lot of the risk through eliminating a lot of manual tasks. Having that automation also gives you the ability to reduce your deployment time through containers, using links through containers like Kubernetes and Ansible. You're now reducing, you're reducing you're increasing your workload density. And they're saying about up to 10x, but we're also, again, by eliminating a lot of the manual tasks, we're now reducing the risk, which is what it's all about. So when we talk about adaptability, now we're taking it to the next level. Because of its container-based software stack, we're now enabling virtualized hosting on, virtualized hosting of the apps on the appliance. Now, I'll get more into that later and what that really means and how that's going to transform and change the landscape of infrastructure. But so this is the family tree, family picture, and what I wanted to note here is that uh, Powerstor is designed with models that really offer increasing levels of memory performance and really giving us a true scale up and scale out architecture. Now, I want to note that there's two types of Powerstor models. There's the Model T, which is down here, and that's really more designed for SAN and or NAS storage. It's not really or, it's actually and. So you can actually have both SAN and NAS within the same infrastructure running simultaneously. And then there's the Powerstor X model, which is actually SAN storage with an integrated hypervisor for VMware and what they call apps on functionality. And I will get into that a little bit more within the next slides. So again, I'll take a pause here for just a second to make sure that everyone's still alive. If you have any specific questions, feel free. Like I said, we have the chat room open. We have people monitoring the chat room. So if you have specific questions on any of the functionality, we will do some Q&A at the end as well. So feel free to ask questions along. So let's talk about the Model T for just a second. And then really, again, this is more designed for uh, SAN and NAS deployments. And this is what you would begin more traditional, you would think of more traditional storage, but it also can handle more modern workloads today. And this is where the game changer is. So let's talk about the Model X and what it does. So now admins can also deploy apps directly on the Powerstor X model. And this is what Dell is calling apps on. So let's talk about where this might be possible use cases. And I'll kind of put it in a frame of where our customers see this and where they're looking to deploy these. So our customers are looking to utilize this feature in things like robo-locations. Maybe you have data intense workloads in the core or edge, things like antivirus software, maybe monitoring software. And again, it's being able to run those apps directly on the storage. And this is a game changer here when you start talking about um, our customers looking to consolidate, or maybe they're looking at today they have maybe a three-tier model in their virtualized environments, or maybe they're looking at hyper-converged. This is actually, again, a game changer when we say trying to consolidate maybe those workloads when it comes to either storage and or the compute. Sorry. And when we talk about adaptability, what does that really mean? And it really just takes it one step further with features like data in place upgrades. And what that does is it allows our customers to really modernize their infrastructure. I think one of the biggest challenges that our customers have when they start to change their infrastructure or modernize their environment is how do they migrate their data? And that is the biggest pain point that our customers have told us that they go through. Moving data from platform to platform is really the biggest challenge that they do. So there was a question about is this going to be an addition or is this going to be replacing older platforms? So right now, I will say that this is the future of storage. There's no plans on the roadmaps to replace any of the storage, but when you start talking about the innovations that Powerstor brings to the table. Our customers, when they start doing their tech refreshes or when they start looking at modernizing their environments, this is where they're going to look. So that's a great question. Like when you talk about compellent, or where is that going to be replacing infrastructure later on? So back to the migration discussion. When you talk about moving the data, when you talk about the data, there are actually native tools for platforms like Unity, Compellent, uh, even VNX. So that really ends the need for migration, because the migrations are actually, the data is actually moved using the native tools of those platforms. So that kind of tied into what I want to discuss at the end. So basically what you're doing is you're kind of eliminating a lot of the need for migration, plus the scalability of Powerstor enables you to grow as your infrastructure grows. And one other thing I wanted to talk about, which I will also go through at the end of this presentation, is the user interface. It's really a very simplified approach to managing Powerstor. And I do have a quick demo at the end of this discussion, but I wanted to take a pause if there was any other questions uh, from the audience to see if there was anything more. So when we're talking about migration, so the native tools are built into Unity, the SC series, which is Compellent, um, and VNX. Now, I also say if you there in the future release, also Extreme IO will be added to that. The other thing I wanted to mention too is if you have tools like vPlex or utilizing vMotion, you could use those tools to actually migrate from other platforms. And that's what our customers are actually looking at as well.
Yeah, Keith, there was a question in the chat about this platform and how it aligns to the rest of the Dell portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone else has, I put an answer in chat, but if anyone else has a question on that, this is the going forward platform from Dell. This is their new modern platform. Nothing's been announced as end of life, but I think it's clear that the engineering and latest technologies going into this platform, and such as things like NVMe and SCM drives. So we look at this as the going forward platform for our customers.
And when you start talking about things, excuse me, start talking about replication and data accessibility, things like having active, which is where a lot of our customers are looking to have in their environments. There are some functionalities that are within Powerstor that enables you to have continuous access to your data. One of those features is something called MetroSync, which is, I would say, a design for campuses to have active environments where the data is always accessible. So the data would be replicating constantly and accessible constantly. So if you have any kind of failure, you do not lose access to your data. So thanks, Rich, for so there's so there was a question in the chat about services and deployment. So there are deployment services that come that can be included with the Powerstor, but those are, I think, that really has to be will be discussed as the each customer's needs arise. Now, I will say that deploying Powerstor, and again, I'll get into this with my demo. deploying Powerstor from a management perspective is a lot easier. There's another question about Powerstor can be replacing for NetApp. So again, utilizing certain tools to migrate the data, it can be a replacement for NetApp because it does have both SAN and NAS functionality. So to kind of put a lid on all of the things that I've discussed is, power, again, to Rich's point, Powerstor is kind of the future, right? Powerstor is providing our customers with a data-centric, intelligent, and adaptable infrastructure. And it's really designed to support, again, what we have is traditional and modern workloads. And that's really done through optimizing performance and scalability, automation, and adaptability. So you can actually grow into that. So I'm going to pause right here for just a second, one more time, because my next thing is going to be the demo. And let me just, there's a few more questions here if anyone has some more questions. So there was a question about 64-bit versus 32-bit. So I'm going to have to, I'll take that as a follow-up, or if Rich, if you have the answer to that, to the question, the last question that was asked, maybe you can look into that. And we could also certainly do a follow-up. So if anyone has any specific questions or wants to do any kind of deeper dive into the technology, and like I said, I'll do a quick demo of the UI, we can certainly arrange to have another session to talk about the deeper functions or get into a more technical discussion of the technology. And I really wanted to just kind of give you a high level of what Powerstor does and why it exists today and why it was created. So without any further ado, so this is the Powerstor Manager UI. Let me just log into that. And some of you, if you've seen, if a lot of this looks familiar, especially if you're familiar with Unisphere Manager, a lot of this will start to look very familiar because Dell is really trying to bring a uniformity to their management platforms. So what the Powerstor management platform does is it gives you kind of the total overview of the entire environment. So when you start looking at things like capacity, the hardware in itself, things like performance metrics, and I'll dive a little deeper into each one of these things, and then when you start to look at deployment, and I could do a quick little deployment as well, to even allocating volumes is very simple. So let's talk really quickly about the alerts and each one of those alerts and what does that mean. It's really a proactive approach. So as alerts come up, and not only does it give you the alert, but it also gives you a lot of the details surrounding the alert, and it gives you some insight to how those alerts can be corrected. So this particular one obviously is talking about looking at the capacity and telling me that based on our consumption, there's a potential for running out of space capacity within 8 days, and obviously you can address that as you need. And again, it's broken down into various alerts. So whether it's just informational, a minor, more major, and then of course your critical alerts as well. Let's run over to performance really quick and how that breaks down. And performance can really be broken down into either bandwidth. You can look at your IOPS, maybe even latency. or a summary. And the other really cool functionality is you can actually get very granular by just dragging and dropping certain aspects of the timeline. So if you wanted to look at, say, this little drop in performance, you can take a look at that. And it gives you the detail surrounding that. So when you're looking at your overall performance, you can get very granular. Of course, there's when you look at again, when you look at bandwidth, how much bandwidth you're driving, and again, we can get granular on looking at all of the different aspects of that. Oops, sorry about that. So when we talk about capacity, not only do you obviously get metrics of the capacity, but you also get the metrics of the data reduction. So when we talk about data reduction, again, I mentioned that Powerstor has inline and always-on data reduction, and it utilizes the efficiencies to the best. Excuse me. So this is the physical right here, the actual physical storage used, but the logical amount of data, and then of course it breaks down of the data reduction. Now that's important to note because when you start doing capacity planning, this will give you insight as to what type of data you have and how much reduction you can get out of that. The other really cool thing too you can do is you could see the top, you can actually tailor this. You could see the top consumers, top consumer volumes, and over here on the dashboard, you could also have a watch list of certain volumes or certain volume groups if you have instances where you have a lot of action going on some of these groups, and you can keep an eye on those. As you can see, this Powerstor is set up to do both block and file, and it's not an either or. It's you can do both simultaneously. Now we look at the volumes and the storage, and each one of these volumes, how easy is it to create a volume? So you can do, I'll just show you really quick volume. And oops, my typing is really off today. Let's make 2 volumes, and let's make them 50 gigabytes each. Now you could also create volume groups and associate them with volume groups, but for the purpose of this discussion, we'll just create the volumes. And now you can associate those volumes with a particular host. Now, because this is a demo, I don't actually have access to these hosts, so I won't actually click any of these. But again, it's so easy. You just click on the host you want those volumes to be allocated to. And as you can see up here, it's creating the volume. And ta-da! I'll refresh the environment. And where is it? Oh, where is it? It's gotta be there somewheres. Yep, here we go. So the demo volume. So when you talk about, again, when we talk about monitoring, again, these are all of the alerts that come up, and you can group these together. But let's talk really quickly about the protection scheme. So you could actually set this up for replication or even managing your snaps. And there's also functionality here to talk about how you migrate data. And again, we talked about this briefly about migrating data either natively from some of Dell's or EMC's platforms. But I also want to show you this. So we talk about the hardware, and this is again a very detailed view into the hardware. Every component you can actually see, whether it's the disk drive, so you can see what each disk drive is, how big it is, and the functionality. We could also go to the rear. These are all the connectivity, and again, each component you can actually zoom in on, and you can get very granular right here for each component. And then, of course, there's the internal view when you start talking about each one of the processors. And this really comes in handy when you're actually talking about troubleshooting as well, right? So if the alert comes up, you have a bad disk drive, on this view, you could actually see which drive would be actually in question. You could actually, you would see the activity of the drives, right? And you can get down into each one of those drives and get a very granular look. And that's kind of the UI in a nutshell. And again, there's a lot more functionality that the UI can do, especially when it comes from a management perspective. But we can actually schedule some time if we want to do a deeper dive into the more advanced functionality, or if you want to get more technical into the management and deploying capabilities.